set lofty goals or intentions for ourselves kind of at the onset of the year. Laura and I personally do not do New Year's resolutions, but each year we do choose a word of the year to kind of help us stay focused on its message throughout the year. Laura's word for this year is strength, which is definitely a challenge during these uncertain times. And the word that I chose for this year is flow. So have you ever been where you're fully immersed in a task or a project or an activity? You're really only concerned with your progress and kind of oblivious to what else is going on in the outside world. Not that I think there is an outside world now, but you're oblivious to the outside world. And sometimes you even lose hours of time because you just get so laser focused on what you're doing and you look up and, all this time has gone by. So if you have experienced that, which I'm assuming everybody has, then you were actually in a state of flow, even if you didn't realize that that's what was happening. So flow really means being in the present moment, being mindful, boosting your creativity, your productivity, your happiness. And many of us really struggle hard to stay in the flow in our normal lives. Sometimes we'll call it being present, whatever, but we have trouble kind of staying in that moment. But now in this pandemic, it's really exaggerated that struggle. So we thought today it was pretty timely to talk about ways that you can be intentional about getting into that flow, staying in that flow, to be able to improve your productivity while you're working from home.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about kind of a few things that you can do. So number one, you can create habits. Make a point to do the same thing every time you are preparing to start an important task. The repetition will alert your brain and body that you're about to focus on that one task at hand. This is something that Brooke and I have learned a lot about in our personal growth, about, biochemistry and neuroscience, all this kind of stuff with these habits. But it's real. It really is real. So a couple of ideas for habits to implement, during this time, but just in general is, maybe a 15-minute morning meditation. If you don't like meditating, maybe just 15 minutes of quiet time or journaling or something like that. Another one, making a cup of coffee. I mean, I use a French press. This is my favorite coffee mug right now, by the way.
Right now.
Yeah. Halloween Town last year was awesome.
I'm already.
Yeah. So I love getting up, putting on my electric kettle, getting my French press ready. That's my habit in the morning that I really look forward to. And when I don't do it because I wake up late or something like that, it throws me off. Exercise, that kind of, those kind of things are, just ideas of things that you can work on to create a habit. And number two is choose to tackle the most important tasks while you are in the flow. This is a big one. Brooke and I went to a conference last year, or it was earlier this year. I honestly don't know. We're on day 482, and I don't even have kids at home like Brooke does, and like many of you do. I just am in my house. But
right now,
pardon?
Time is an illusion. It does not exist.
So true. I woke up today and literally thought it was Friday for some reason. So it's not, by the way. It's Tuesday. But we went to a conference, and the keynote speaker will remember his name. But he talked specifically about your attention span and how your flow in a specific day works, and what you need to focus on when you're in the flow. And a big one is don't waste time, your flow time where you're really in the groove, on mindless tasks like answering emails or reviewing social media. That's something you can do when you're feeling kind of humdrum and your coffee is gone and all that stuff. So that's a good tip to have. You'll also feel more accomplished if you knock out the most important task first, because then you can move on to those tasks that are going to take just super short amount of time. It's easier to remain in the flow when you're working on these important tasks because of the level of significance of the task. So when you're feeling that flow, jump straight into something that is important and significant, and then drop off later to turning on Judge Judy and answering emails.
Right. So time matters, even though we've established that time doesn't exist. We went there all woo-woo. But we've talked about how important it is to work when you're most creative, most productive, like Laura said. But doing this work at your peak times really helps you to stay in that flow, because you are only one person with so much capacity in a single day. And Laura and I throw that around frequently. We'll get on our task and then we'll get to a certain point in the day where it's a lull because we kind of work about the same. And one of us will send something and be like, I do not have the capacity for that today. And so, that's a real thing. People really do hit a wall. So you want to make sure that you are paying really a close attention to how you're spending your time and where you're spending your time. And so if you're working during your peak performance time, you're going to find it a lot easier to focus. Like Laura said, you may still have caffeine in you, less distractions, whatever. But the book that she was talking about, or the speaker that she was talking about, was CleoCon, and it was last October. But it was Daniel Pink. And I actually saw him this weekend. I watched that 100 Humans, I think it's what it's called, on Netflix for a little bit. It's actually really fascinating, but and they talked to him kind of about human behavior and habits. So he has several books out and he's really interesting. He's done a lot of research. But the book that she's referring to is called When, W-H-E-N. And it's a great book. You can check it out to figure out kind of where your peak performance time is. And that'll help you figure out how to be more productive and maybe zone in on where you are better able to get into that flow. The fourth one we're going to talk about is removing distractions, which is hilarious to me because that's super much, easier said than done at this point in time. And I am currently full on having to homeschool 3 kids and operating my businesses and stuck inside. And I have my cats running around like crazy. And I told Laura I wanted to start this whole live with both of my cats and be like, hello, you cool cats and kittens, because, that's just my life right now. But anyways, that would definitely distract me. So you want to remove those distractions, put the cats in another room.
Maybe next week she'll do it.
I'm going to start all of them. She has a lot of followers. So I think if we bring our cool cats and kittens in, I'll just bring them in for the show and then let them go. Nobody cares at this point, right? But so, really all we can do at this point really is focus on the things that we can control, because distractions are huge flow killers. So here's a few things that you can do to help minimize those distractions. You can turn off email notifications and maybe check it on a schedule. So, you may be at your peak focus time in the morning. So it may not be ideal to check emails, first thing in the morning, but you may, 3 o'clock when you're in kind of that lull, you may want to check your emails every day then, and just kind of set that habit of when you check it and when you respond to people, and, people will acclimate to that. And then you want to shut down Slack, other communication platforms. I have about 1 million group me's, and I come in and there are about 400 messages I've missed because I have turned them all on silent because it is a distraction. So also turn your phone on Do Not Disturb. I actually do that a lot. Also get a lot of messages and come back later and I don't know what's happening. And then sometimes people independently message me to make sure I'm still alive because I've ignored group messages for 2 days. It's not intentional, but it's for sanity purposes. But all the dings, all the group messages, different people are doing different things. There are some people that are furloughed right now. There are some people that are still working and have kids at home. There's some people that don't. So we're all kind of at different stages. So, they don't necessarily have to stop messaging me. I just might not necessarily permit it through to me. And if you have an office door, which I do not, I'm actually sitting at a kitchen table in the middle of my kitchen, and Laura is on her couch, but shut your door if you have one. And if your kids are quieter than my kids are, you may can successfully use headphones. That might be good too. So, and lastly, clean up clutter. So clutter drives me insane. If you can at least around your little workspace, clean up clutter, you're going to be less distracted, because I don't want to sit here beside my kitchen sink and see a, sink full of dishes, because I'm going to be thinking I need to go do those dishes the whole time I'm trying to work. So you don't want those kind of distractions. So those are some things that we can control and we can reduce.
I'll say I work in my living room 90% of the time, and it's the cleanest room in my entire house because of what Brooke said. I need it to be nice and clean so that I don't feel like I need to get up and do stuff. Also, just personal note, one of my close friends who's a CPA, maybe 3 years ago, told me to turn off my email notifications, and it saved my life. I mean, like, seriously, I would get panic attacks just looking at that bubble that would be like, 75 emails or whatever. Oh, it was just crazy. So
I thought you were going to
just a little person.
I thought you were going to say sitting in your living room, you have to close your blinds because it's like squirrel. I didn't know what you were going to didn't know where you were going with that.
I'm a little elevated, so I can't actually see much that's walking by or anything like that. Otherwise, I would probably have to close my blinds, to be honest, because I am the of the dog and up with the easily distracted. Yeah.
I like that.
Pardon?
I like that visual. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Thanks. So number 5, we'll get out of the although I think it's just kind of, this is how Brooke and I talk normally, and then you add in the fact that we're all a little loopy, I think, at this point. This is how we roll. So number 5 is set a schedule or a timer. Otherwise it's not sustainable if you don't set yourself a schedule with breaks in it, or set a timer for, I'm going to answer emails for 60 minutes and then I'm going to take a break, whatever it might be. Your brain really needs rest and rejuvenation after intense focus. So keep that in mind. Be realistic with your schedule. Don't block off 6 hours for emails, because that would be a nightmare in my mind. If your job requires it, do what you need to do, but set boundaries. This is the hardest probably, and the most important thing is setting boundaries with yourself and with other humans, not taking on things. Brooke says this, and one of her best friends that she works with on the mindset stuff. Sometimes your best guess is a hell no. And that's a really important thing to kind of consider, but also just boundaries in general. That's a big thing too. Limit the time that you stay in a state of focus. It's, it really can exhaust you. And I don't mean like do it for 20 minutes. I just mean you can't do it for 11 hours in a day. There are often times that Brooke and I are both working, pretty much all day into the night. Homeschooling, it's a lot more involved. My opinion, it's a lot more involved than it should be for parents who actually have jobs too. But which most parents do, to be honest. And even stay-at-home parents, probably it's a lot more involved than they really want to be too. That's why the kids are in school, coming from non-parents, sorry. But, just, limit that time. I can't be working 20 hours a day. I've done that in the past. It is really not sustainable. Try dividing your flow time, to like maybe 25, 30 minutes with small breaks to stay in the flow. And it's, for me, that's a little bit longer just because it takes me a minute to get in that flow, but, see what works for you. You can add more time after a couple hours in the flow for rest. That's going to, maybe take you completely out of the flow. So just be careful about, experiment with what works for you. It's kind of a, it's a moving target, and if you don't try it, then you're never going to know if it works for you. But that's just kind of, I don't know if Brooke, if you want to add anything to that.
No, yeah, you just kind of have to mess with it. And I think too, like going back and figuring out when you're most productive, all of that kind of goes hand in hand. If you can figure that out, you can kind of learn your work style. We're all kind of trying to figure out what works best. It may not be practical when I have, every 20 minutes have to go check in with my kids and figure out what they're doing, or put them on a conference call with a teacher. So, you have to adjust that as it goes along. But like Laura said, you'll figure out, everybody's a little bit different, what works for you. And then, just make sure that there's self-care in there, that you are not burning yourself out, and that you give yourself a little bit of grace in there, because, that's part of it too. Have a list of a few things that you're going to accomplish that day that have to get done, set those timers, do those things. And then that way you feel accomplished at the end of the day, and you don't have to feel like you didn't do enough. Because sometimes it's hard, especially as a parent. I do this in the summer sometimes because they're home more. I feel not giving enough to my kids. I'm not giving enough to work. And so it's just a balance that you never win. And it's kind of that scenario here with the added work of having to have kids at home and actually making sure that they're getting their work done and they're where they're supposed to be. And when they need, I have a smaller child too. And so she needs me to do things with her. And so, it's balancing those things and feeling like you can't get anything done and you're failing at work and you're failing at home, but you're not failing. Just figure it out, do the best you can, give each other grace, give yourself grace, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah. So the key basically that we're talking about is just to keep practicing these things. It's really hard to switch up your habits and routines, but with all of your worlds being, in our worlds being turned upside down right now, now is actually the perfect time to start implementing some of these new practices into your work routine, so that when you go back to your regular work life, you can be more productive because you've tested this stuff out at home when you maybe don't have as many pressures from the work world. It's, I'm just saying that obviously that doesn't apply to everybody, but hopefully we'll get back to normal, even if it's a new normal soon. So we just also want to say, we just launched our Building a Virtual Law Firm course this week. If you're looking for a more flexible and fulfilling way to practice law, go ahead and get on our website, MyVirtual.Lawyer. There's a toggle for attorneys, and sign up for our attorney newsletter that we send out weekly, and get tech tips, practice and wellness tips, and you'll be the first to be notified when our virtual law firm course launches again, which is going to be on I think it's May 11th, right? Not May 13th.
Oh, I don't know. Did I write the wrong date?
I think it's May 11th. So the next one's going to start on May 11th. It's
time illusion.
Mark your calendars for the next course. The course started yesterday, so it's a 5-week course that's really in-depth and detailed about how to actually practice virtual lawyering. There are a lot of really great resources out there right now, and people are offering free, technology kind of here's what's happening type things. But we like to say, we've been doing it for over 5 years. We've been 100% virtual the entire time we've been in business. So just, mark it on your calendar, sign up for our newsletter. It's free. So the course isn't, but the newsletter is. And we will be here next week. We hope you guys have a great week. Try to stay sane, do something for yourself every day, even if it's just, going in the closet and shutting the door and breathing. And we'll see you next week at 1 Eastern, 12 Central Time, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 Pacific. You guys have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, guys.